welcome to the Ask JP podcast, where I work with my lovely co-host Monet to answer the questions and topics of the day. Since we are in the midst of Mardi Gras, we thought we'd have a Mardi Gras deep into Mardi Gras.
We're deep gras at this point.
Deep Gras. That sounds like the deep state. I don't know how I feel about that.
It's a thing. It's a thing. I'll send it to you.
Okay. I'm just gonna. We have a Generation Z versus Generation X kind of miscommunication sometimes. So, anyway, Ask Jimmy podcast. Monet and I are gonna ask the question of the day. Today, we are so excited to have Aryanna Gamble from Chewbacchus, which is one of the most magnificent, locally sourced, amazing parades the city of New Orleans has ever and will ever have. And wait, let me make sure the intergalactic crew of Chewbacchus.
Yes.
Because you're not limited to a single galaxy, you travel through multiple galaxies. So be very clear, the intergalactic crew of Chewbacchus. Yes. All right, so first step, stage one. Monet is going to ask the JP questionnaire.
Yes, the Ask JP questionnaire.
I hand over to Monet.
Thank you. All right. So we have a questionnaire similar to the Colbert questionnaire, where we ask you questions and you just answer them, and they're just fun and silly and whatnot. Sure. So, okay, first question. What is your favorite sandwich?
Wow.
See, she lulls you into a false sense of security, being like, not that important. Everyone in New Orleans will judge you based upon this decision. Because if you pick some tourist trap crap, you will be judged and found wanting.
Doesn't have to be tied to a certain establishment. It can just be a general sandwich.
No, I'm going to go all in. So I have two favorite sandwiches that I really love, but for clarity's sake, I will choose one. I'm going to go with Bonafide's fried chicken sandwich.
Ooh,
that is a gutsy decision. You go with a sandwich. You go with a fried chicken sandwich, which is like the most divisive chicken sandwich you could possibly do. People have such strong opinions about fried chicken sandwiches, and you just
I dove right in.
You went right in.
Listen, also the official fried chicken sandwich of Chewbacchus. They're close friends of the crew. We love them so much. They're at our lineup every year, mostly because I love them so much.
Well,
this is good information.
This is good information. So if you go to the lineup, you get chicken sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ooh.
Okay.
I love that. All right, next question. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Wow. This is great. I guess probably, in an alternate universe, there's definitely a version of me that's a baker.
Ooh, what do you like to bake?
I love baking cakes, cookies, pastries, macaroons. I love cakes a lot. That's like my first passion.
You just said macaroons. You make macaroons.
Mm-hmm.
Those are so complicated.
That macaroons are complicated. That's like immediate bakery cred.
Yeah.
The fact that you not only make them, you make them with regularity. Like it wasn't like a one-time fluke. When you want a macaroon, you just make one.
Yeah,
that's a strong flex. That's just like it's like you want some macaroons? I can whip those up. That's wow.
Yeah, okay. Totally easy. I have no doubt that I would succeed at doing this. And there was a hot second where I thought about where I kind of started doing it for money, and then realized that I don't want to make things for strangers who are customers. I just want to make the things that I want to make. And as soon as I started kind of going down the path of doing it for money, I realized it wasn't as fun anymore, because right now, it's being in the kitchen is zen, right? It's like it's a release from what I do on a normal basis. So it's almost like the equivalent of Chewbacchus and working on throws too, right? It's like you get to take time off from being yourself, your work self, and like really just kind of zone into something that you love. And baking definitely does that for me.
Yeah, I feel that. It's important to have like your release hobby.
Yeah.
Okay, this is apropos for Mardi Gras. What is your favorite king cake?
I love the tartine king cake.
I haven't had that one.
Let me tell you. So Kara Benson is the owner. She's also the owner of Toast. So they both have the same king cake. It's so good. All of her breads are amazing. But the king cake has this kind of very buttery, cinnamony, cream cheesy filling that's not like a standard cream cheese filling. It's not just like she just stuck cream cheese in there. It's very decadent and delicious. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I have to amend my previous answer on king cakes. After a long conversation with my family, our favorite king cake is actually the Kowalski king cake. My daughter, her friend is Henry Kowalski. And after we went to the Comic-Con, the Wizards deal downtown, his mom gave us a king cake like as a thank you. It was the most amazing king cake we ever had in our entire lives. So it's not reproducible. None of you will ever have one unless you're friends with the Kowalskis. But when I told her what my previous answer, my wife was like, "You're a fool. The best king cake we had was the Kowalski king cake." So I was like, "You are 100% correct. I wasn't mistaken. A home baker made, I mean, literally, we told Fiona, we're like, you're best friends with Henry now." She's like, "But," I was like, no. You don't have a choice. If his mother makes foods like this, you are now best friends. Whatever we have to do to ship this relationship, you should get married. You should just make this a permanent addition to our family.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's, not
for the right king cake, it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a price and we're willing to name it.
Sorry, that was my correction. My correction from the previous podcast. Sorry.
The listeners at home appreciate it. All right, Cafe du Monde or Morning Call?
Morning Call.
For those of you who could not see because you're on audio, the put up all look was like, "You son of a bitch. You just asked me the question I did not want to answer. I'm on the spot, so I'm picking one, but this is not an easy question here." That look you just got, Monet, was like fire.
Okay. Next question. What number is JP thinking of?
42.
No.
Next question. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh,
I think this is the toughest one.
This is the Stranger Things question.
Season 4, for those of you who aren't caught up. Season 4, Stranger Things questions.
Forever?
Ever? Yes, forever.
So this is hard. I feel like I have two answers, and like I think as a child, something that I always listened to over and over again. I really loved Yesterday, the Beatles. Like I just think it's beautiful. I love it.
Right.
Adult me wants to listen to Midnight City all the time because every time I hear that song, I want to dance in the streets with strangers.
Okay.
Those are two strong answers. So we'll give young Aryanna an answer and adult Aryanna an answer, and you've answered for both. Okay.
Yes.
Take that.
And two solid choices.
Two solid choices.
In your opinion, what is the most underrated movie? I know we're hitting you with the hard questions here.
I know Monet gets your guard down. She's like, "Oh, it's a nothing question here." Oh,
I thought this was gonna be easy.
It's all subjective.
No,
pop culture stuff.
This is like a pop quiz under pressure. So I think something that I will rewatch over and over that's fairly new. I really love Rogue One.
I have become a fan. Paul Harang in my office. Sorry, our council chief of staff. He really came at me hard that Rogue One. Like he's like, I know you got, and I was like, there's no freaking Jedi or lightsabers or anything except for some. Not going to spoilers, but and then I watched Andor, and then I watched it, and it was like, wow, like, it was just like,
yeah, and so I've come to realize that I think a lot of what the current stuff that I like in Star Wars land is I like the non Jedi. Well, that's not true. I like I really like Rogue One. I really like Rebels. And I think the common thread there is that they're not tied to the Anakin saga. Because I feel like there's so much history, there's so much drama, there's so much happening there that the stories are, especially the latest trilogy, it's like bogged down in its own history.
well, like
And
that was my big commentary on the Who Dat Jedi podcast was that there's so many more stories in Star Wars than Anakin and his family drama. And I was a huge expanded universe fan because they totally went well beyond that. And I like what Filioni is doing right now with Star Wars. Like he's kind of like, let's go focus on like all the other stuff because being the fated chosen one is kind of like a trope that everyone's kind of done to death. And I mean, honestly, the original Star Wars was like the archetype that created the trope in a lot of ways, like the chosen one. And like, there's so many good stories in that universe.
yeah, and like for me, I can't get through that last season of Rebels without like boohoo crying, right? And it's good storytelling, right? It's characters who draw you in. It's characters who you want to root for and succeed. And spoiler alert: when anybody dies, I'm just like I was devastated. I couldn't. I was. So I think that when you have characters who, and especially in Rogue One, you know their fate. You know what's going to happen to everyone. Yep. And when I went into the movie, I had such low expectations because I thought, how are they going to pull off a good story when we all know what happens? And they still did. And the more I watch it, the more I just really love it as a complete story that stands on its own.
No, I mean you're a million% right. I've been very interested to follow how they've really moved a lot of the animated stuff to live action, and they've done a really good job on casting. Like, I am very interested. I know they already showed who they cast for Ezra Bridger, right?
Yes.
So I'm really just I like the fact that they're rewarding people who were Star Wars fans during the dry years when all you had was the animated. Because people were like, who the hell's Ashoka? And you're like, you don't know anything. Just shut your mouth. Or people were like, who's Ezra Bridger? Shut your mouth. Like I've got my Sabine pop runner somewhere, but I'm like, these are characters that were more fleshed out than the movie people who you got to like know over multiple seasons. And like it's just really interesting to see someone who really respects the Star Wars fandom who's now in charge of directing it. And he's not beholden. All the movies went wrong, including this most recent three, and that they were like, we need to make sure that people who like the movies like the new movies. And it wasn't like if we tell a good story, they'll like it anyway. And everything wrong with the new trilogy is all tied to, oh, look, we gave Rian Johnson leeway. Oh, no, the most toxic fans are upset. Let's redo everything to make people happy. Like, it's a lot like, I feel like Star Wars did a better job of not going the DC route of just knee jerking every movie around to try and figure out something that fit in the square hole. And maybe Disney, because of Marvel, just kind of realized like it's a slow burn. Like you just got to give these people room and let them know that you're going to give them series, you're going to give them movies where the payoff might be in 8 years. And you just got to be okay with that. And I think that's really benefited Star Wars, because Star Wars is nothing if not a space opera. It is like massive in scope.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
if you try to distill it down to like the 12-year-old you're trying to sell a toy to, you get a really bad movie that no one likes. If you put it up here where it should be, the 12-year-old may not buy a toy, but everyone in between will watch that movie. So it's my 2 cents. I was preaching to the choir because we're both nerds. My dark saber is right there. Wait, right there. And my Mandalorian poster is right there. I love me some Mando.
Love it. When Ahsoka made her debut on Mandalorian, I lost it. I'm pretty sure my brain short circuited.
It was, and not just that, they captured her personality, like her almost anti-social aversion to Jedi, like perfectly. I mean, I'll tell you, like, not for us to be like both have like nerd crying over cartoons, but that whole last season where Ahsoka saw Anakin as Darth Vader, and that whole exchange, you was like, your heart just was like torn out of your chest and like on the ground. At the Comic-Con, they had the Ahsoka voice actor there.
Yeah.
And
Ashley.
she was amazing. Because she was like, someone asked her on the panel, they were like, do you think Ahsoka could have saved Anakin? And she was like, on one hand, she probably thinks she could, but on the other hand, she knows she couldn't. And it was like the most Ahsoka answer you could have given. Like, if you know their relationship and how like tight they were as characters, you absolutely know that like she would think that, but no, it's also a lie. And like Monet's like, I don't know what you two are talking about. But she's like nodding like, these nerds need to shut up. We have other stuff to talk about. I'm sorry. I can't.
No, don't apologize. Next question though. And this is a fun one. What is your favorite curse word?
My favorite what?
Your favorite curse word.
I probably say fuck a lot. It like inserts itself so smoothly into every conversation.
It's a staple.
Yes. It's a reaction word. If I just one thing, just fuck.
It's all purpose. It's like the all purpose curse word.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. What do you love most about New Orleans?
Oh. I had a conversation recently when we were at Bohem with someone who was coming into town. It was somebody who was visiting from Atlanta. And we're all hanging out at the parade, and we're standing around, we're dressed up, we're hanging out. And she just said, I think what I love most about being here this week in this moment is really seeing how accepting everyone is of everything. Like I can walk around in, a goth girl outfit. I can walk around in sparkly sequins. I can walk around whatever outfit I walk down the street in. I'm not going to feel ostracized or like I don't belong. Like I feel like I can be myself here. And I think that's the thing we do best.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting, when you look back on the history of New Orleans, like 50, 60 years ago, that wasn't the case at all. And it's just amazing to see how we have bloomed in these last 50 years and how a city with so much history can continue to evolve like that. Because I think New Orleans is by far the most accepting city in the South. Period.
Well, I mean, Monet has done a tremendous amount of work with a lot of different groups and studying the history of New Orleans and how accepting or not accepting it has been historically. And she's 100% right. I mean, like, it's one of those things where we see New Orleans that we grew up in and see it as one way. It's a lot like, the civil rights movement. Like, things that were normal now were completely abnormal 40, 50, 60 years ago. But I mean, it's a city that continues to evolve as the rest of the state stays stagnant.
I mean, the fact that 5 of the 7 council members are Black, I think council members from 100 years ago would be rolling over in their graves if they knew that. And good.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you think about things like the upstairs lounge, and Ruby Bridges, and like all of these iconic, like sad moments in our history where it's like, people being ugly about what's happening, and it's I think it's incredible to see how we continue to evolve, and how we continue to get better.
Right. Yeah, no, totally agree. Retweet. All right, and last question of the Ask JP questionnaire. Do you have a good book recommendation?
Ooh. I'm going to recommend anything by Claudia Gray.
Okay.
Because she's a New Orleans author who also writes Star Wars books.
Oh, hey. Well, perfect.
Did she write one of the new High Republic books?
So she wrote a Leia book. She wrote one called Bloodlines. She wrote a I want to say there's one that's a High Republic. I want to say it's a set. It's a volume 1, volume 2 High Republic. But she's local. She's a New Orleanian. She writes Star Wars books, and she will be at Tulane's New Orleans Book Festival in March.
Oh, I want to go to that this year. I didn't get to go last year.
Yes, she did write a High Republic book called The Fallen Star, because that is how, like I said, Star Wars has kind of reinvented itself. They're like, oh, you want to do crazy shit in Star Wars? You could do it in the past. Just go do it. Do whatever crazy shit you want to do in the past, because if we put it 2,000 years ago in the past, you can do whatever you want. Doesn't affect anything. But no, I think I've read Master and Apprentice. But she's that's awesome. It's a great recommendation.
That concludes the Ask JP questionnaire. Yes. That concludes the Ask JP questionnaire. You are known to the listeners and viewers of this fine podcast, and we can finally conduct some official business.
All right, let's get to it.
All right. The first actual non-Ask JP question is, why don't you explain to our audience what the history is of the intergalactic crew of Chewbacchus? Like how it started, how it's grown, kind of what was the impetus behind it, and so forth.
Sure. So the idea for Chewbacchus was kind of born at Saturn Bar in New Orleans. So apropos. It was a conversation between 2 of the founding overlords about, somebody, Kira had an idea of Chewbacchus. Like it came to her in a vision, and she met with Ryan Ballard, who was, author and now co-founder of Chewbacchus, and was like, I have one word for you. And it came kind of to fruition from there. And from its tiny origins, which the first parade marched on Bacchus Sunday against the Bacchus route. It was a rabble group of maybe like 150 was probably generous, nerds. And I joined in the next year, and it was rained out, but we still marched in the rain. I was dressed up in a Leela from Futurama costume. So I was in a white tank top and leggings, nice. And it poured rain. So great costume for that day. And it was about, every year it was steadily growing. And what I remember hearing about it originally and immediately thinking, these are my people. These are like nerds who want to make things, talk about Star Wars, talk about, why Chewbacca hasn't been promoted to general, and also do Mardi Gras things. The whole walking crew aspect of the crew really appealed to me. I think growing up in New Orleans, watching all the big crews come down St. Charles Avenue, I never felt like I would be rich enough or connected enough to be part of that tradition. And I think, like, as a small child, the walking crews always really appealed to my heart. Like the weirdness of it, the kind of like slow, Pete Fontaine. I always looked forward to seeing him in the half past walking crew coming down St. Charles Avenue on Mardi Gras Day. I was like, I think I was an anomaly as a child, because I don't think all the other kids were looking forward to that. But to me, it was just the spirit of it really spoke to me. And so Chewbacchus kind of brings together all of those elements, because it's inclusive, it's easy to join, it's bringing together nerd culture and pop culture, and kind of talking about it in a way that's, parody and satire of Mardi Gras, right? So, and I think there's a lot of tradition there. There's a lot of people, I think, who look at Chewbacchus and say, oh, that's just the Disneyfication of Mardi Gras. That's just a gentrification of Mardi Gras. But I think the true origins are really more in line with what Mardi Gras is, right? Because pop culture is our current mythology, right? It's how we talk, it's the stories we tell that we learn from. We learn lessons about who's good, who's bad, who we want to look up to, who are the heroes that teach us how to be good people, and who we want to emulate. And that's the same role that mythology played. That's the same role that mythology continues to play in its kind of somewhat influence in Mardi Gras too, right? Like we look up to the muses and how they inspire us. Like that through line is there. And that's really what the origins of Chewbacchus were. And the more we've continued to grow over the years, now we're just huge in comparison. And so there were some growing pains there in the middle, I think, going from an organization of about 150 to 200 people to an organization of 2,800 members this year. That's a big change in who we are. But I think what we kind of held true to over time was keeping membership costs low, keeping it inclusive, making sure that anybody who wants to join can join and be part of Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Before we get to the next question, I do want to say two things. First is I 100% hear you on the mythology argument.
Oh my God, yes, that spoke to my soul. I was like,
because it makes more sense just logically and as a creative, real thinker to see the value in the stories that are being told now versus some of the really ridiculous stories that have been. I mean, I'm a big fan of mythology, like Neil Gaiman's American Gods, Neil Gaiman's. I mean, like, it's all very interesting in how they've reinvented it, like, Percy Jackson. It's all interesting, but you're still rehashing kind of a mythology that was created by a privileged group of people who are running various cultures, who are like, the privilege of Zeus is that he can sleep with anyone he wants. that is the story of Zeus. The story of Zeus is that he's got a lot of illegitimate kids, because if he is coming to smash, there's nothing you can do to stop him, basically, ever. That's literally like
he holds all the power.
He holds all the power. Like he will turn into a goose. He will turn into rain. You can't get away from him. Like, it is. If you really look at Zeus, he was like the OG rapist.
Yeah, he's actually the villain.
Oh my God.
Yes,
yeah.
But if you look at the stories that inspire people, that have substance, I mean, like, I'm a huge comic book nerd. Like, comic books and the mythologies they build, and how their mythologies really evolve to meet people where they're at over each generation. Like the Superman that my dad knew, not Superman that my kids will know. The character, though he's got some central tenets, he evolves with people, which if you never read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, you should slap yourself and read it. But that is kind of the central theme there, is that like the new gods are the gods of things like technology and social media, and that the zeitgeist of people defines what a god is. So to your point, like I don't see y'all as upstarts. You're kind of like the manifestation of what currently is mythology. But what I will say is a friendly piece of advice. I think you should be inclusive of everyone except for L. Ron Hubbard. That's where I draw the line. So it's like, hey, I've got my my Battlefield Earth, where I'd be like, nah, bro, bro, sorry. We let everyone in. There's some Heinlein gets here with Starship Trooper stuff on, but L. Ron Hubbard, not really a sci-fi writer. He's a cultist. Sorry.
That's the Scientology guy, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
Also, the worst sci-fi writer ever. Like, and his books are this thick, and they're terrible. But I just wanted a little suggestion.
I don't think anybody's proposed anything.
Okay, like just say, like, I would take that to the High Council and Overlords, be like, hey, we have the L. Ron Hubbard contingent here, and be like, those are really just Scientologists coming to convert you. That's not really guys who are here to like be part of the fandom. So I yield to Monet to go with her question now. Sorry.
I have so many more questions. The hypothetical of Scientologists trying to join Chewbacchus, but I'll save that for later. I'm just like,
I think there'd be a conflict of interest there because we are also a religion.
I was like, is it religious discrimination? Like, what? I have so many questions.
That has been the argument of Scientologists over everything since Scientologists were created. Right. But I did not mean to go down that rabbit hole. We're going to get a weird flag now for this episode being like, talks about religion in a negative way. So let's just go to the next thing. Sorry, Monet.
So I love the way that Chewbacchus, embraces fandoms. I think, especially me growing up, and this is going to age me and make me look like a child, but whatever. But like, reading Harry Potter, like that was my first like fandom I was in. I was really into Percy Jackson, and then like it just kind of all blossomed from here. So I think it's really interesting that y'all took, we're Star Wars people, but also come one, come all. What was the motivation behind going the whole fandom route?
It was an evolution over time, honestly. We had originally we were very sci-fi oriented, and if you're not sci-fi, get out of here. And kind of in joking with ourselves, we kind of created also Puke, which is people for the inclusion of elves, winebots, and unicorns in Chewbacchus. And so that turned into an entire like unicorn subcrew in Chewbacchus. And
so bronies are welcome.
Yes. It was an evolution because I think we really were thinking about who we wanted to be and who we wanted to include. And we didn't want to be the group that was like, only these nerds are welcome.
Well, I appreciate that because you know how Star Trek fans feel about Star Wars fans and vice versa. So I appreciate that you had the olive branch out early versus beating them off with a stick.
Yeah.
Although for the record, Star Trek fans are kind of weird. Just going to put that out there. I mean, I know you're listening right now. If you're really into Star Trek and don't see the value of Star Wars, that says something about you. I'm looking at you, Star Trek fans out there. So just putting that out there. Aryanna understands. Star Trek fans are weird, super weird. I mean, Spock. Just saying. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So what? What other fan? We talked about Star Trek, Star Wars. I assume there's some Doctor Who in there.
There's Doctor Who. There's Supernatural. There's Stranger Things. There's
Let me ask you a question. Is there Firefly?
There is a Firefly crew. We have our
I'm super interested.
Yeah, our official brass band of Chewbacchus for the past, I don't know, 10 years has been the Browncoat Brass Band, who
Wow.
also march with the Compagnonettes. And there have been some iterations of Firefly groups. The evolution of Chewbacchus is also groups come in and out of fashion, and people who start one group are like, okay, I'm bored with this, I'm going to do something else now this year, which we encourage, right? Because then that keeps the crew fresh and interesting. There's also been groups like that. One year there was a crew of Cher, and
Love that.
in
Love
the
that.
in the application they were like, you might think that a crew of Cher doesn't belong in Chewbacchus, but you'd be wrong because she's obviously an alien.
Yes.
That is honestly, and I'm gonna piss off a lot of David Bowie fans. There's a through line between the two of them. And if you look at many of the fashion and music icons of the last four generations, the people that defied all social expectations were pretty much aliens, strangers in a strange land, Robert Heinlein, reference. Cher was that, David Bowie was that. Those people deserve to be in sci-fi fandom because at the time they were so far ahead of their time, they were literally the future.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
so, we welcome everyone. Whatever you want to nerd out about it, come do it in Chewbacchus. Like that's the thing. The women of Wakanda. We've got new groups. We've got groups that have been around for a long time. And everybody in Chewbacchus is welcome. You put in what you want to get out of it.
Well, like my costume for Halloween was, and Monet doesn't like it's not politically correct, was Fat Thor. Was a Thor with depression and anxiety issues.
Those of us that don't know are like, what the hell? Are you fat shaming Thor?
No, he's fat.
No,
I've learned this now. I've taken on this information.
But I think there's a lot of that. So everybody saw that costume was like, that is the most amazing costume. And I was like, it was sweatpants, a bathrobe, and a sweatshirt with not as big a fat belly as necessary because I was also kind of chubby. So, but I was like, I could totally see a crew of fat Thors and sweatpants Spider-Mans from Enter the Spider-Verse. And it would be the most comfortable outfit to wear on a walking crew for several miles because it's literally just like wearing leisure gear.
Yeah, that's basically how the Rolling Elliots started. Rolling Elliots are just like a big sub crew of people on bikes with wearing red hoodies, and they have little ETs in their bike basket. And it was started because it was like, I'm not that crafty. I don't know what to do. How can I get a bunch of my friends to join? And, I think there's room for everybody at the table, whether you want to be the Intergalactic Realtors Association conference and do your own face prosthetics and do a whole bit and build out your thing and really dive all in. Or, there's also easily accessible to people who are not crafty crews too. So we range all kinds, all types, and all aliens are welcome.
Well, I'm going to skip my question of how has the parade evolved over the
years.
Yes,
I feel like we've
pretty
covered
much
that.
destroyed that question already. You've already handled it. So let's get to something generally about walking parades. And I'm sure you knew this question was coming. Historically, how have your interactions with the city gone thus far?
It's been varied. I think in our upstart years, there were definitely lots of kind of antagonistic conversations. And we weren't doing our best to come to the table with everything that we could to do things the right way. I think we've kind of moved into that space, and we're still not kind of getting better conversations happening, which is where I feel frustrated. I want to say back in 2018 had a conversation with NOPD about moving outside of the kind of window of municipal carnival because we're competing too many resources, downtown versus the uptown parades, which honestly has been great for us. It was a good move. We've moved now 4 weeks ahead of Carnival, and we're kind of alone and at the front end of Mardi Gras. And I love that for us. I was really worried when we moved that that people weren't going to be ready, that like it was going to be too early in the season and nobody was going to come to like I had visions of nobody at the parade, and it was wildly successful because we weren't competing against other parades. And we've just kind of exploded ever since. So I think like that was a very productive conversation. And I'm going to give kudos and props to Andrew Palumbo because he has been the best officer to work with at NOPD, and has always been a great resource for like honest and frank conversations about what it is and is not possible. And when he moved out of special events, I think that was kind of difficult for us because then we didn't have a good established relationship with how things needed to change. And I think over time, Chewbacchus, we've grown. We're willing to recognize that we're not the same parade we used to be, and we don't fall within the same restrictions of like we can't do the same thing that other parades do. We're not the same. We're not the same beast. We're not the same animal. We're just a different type of parade, and that requires us to be, flexible in what our needs are. But it's also been difficult because, for example, last year when our parade route was cut essentially 2 days before we rolled, there was no inkling that anything was wrong. There's a process. You submit your permit, you go through review, everything's reviewed, and you say, yes, you have a permit. And then 2 weeks before you have a check-in, and your check-in is supposed to be, is there anything that needs to change? Everything looked normal for our check-in last year. And then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out of us. And that's not the first time something like that has happened, right? Because then back in 2019, we went through the whole same process. And, the week of the parade, the fire department told us we couldn't have our after party where we wanted to have it, which, okay, like, I think where the breakdown is in communication, right? If this is the rule, tell me what the rule is so I know when we're planning, not the week of the parade, not when we have to stop and change everything, because it affects businesses, it affects our crew, it affects spectators. Like the domino effect impact of when we don't know what the plan is real. Yeah. And it's like make or break for businesses. There is no other parade that does the route that Chewbacchus does, that goes by those restaurants on St. Charles Avenue, that brings the amount of revenue that Chewbacchus does for those businesses. It is literally their biggest night of the year. And so when the parade got cut last year, it wasn't just this ragtag group of people who were impacted. It was a lot of people who, frankly, there's businesses that were banking on opening Chewbacchus weekend that fell through because the business just wasn't there in the same way, in the same capacity. We need to do better about planning ahead and understanding what the sandbox is, because we can't keep doing the same thing where we pretend like all of these walking crews don't matter, because they do.
No, I think two things to your point. And when I was talking to folks earlier on the Who Dat Jedi podcast, which everyone should listen to, by the way, and when they were talking about, 2 days notice means that business has already ordered the food, they've ordered the beer, they've ordered all the stuff based upon previous years, and you just left them hanging. Not you, the city left them hanging. And it goes back to kind of that general idea. And like I said, I always want to give credit because Arthur Hardy was the one that in my head planted the idea of, like, in his book, Chewbacchus is in there. Like, he's like, this is part of Mardi Gras now. And they have to have rules and regulations and and understanding are valued like the rest of Mardi Gras. I mean, you guys, Crew de View, Crew d'Illusion, like Joan of Arc, you're part of the Mardi Gras schedule. Literally, like the official schedule of the city of New Orleans, Mardi Gras, you're in it. And the fact that those crews and their relationships with the city are so much more robust and the respect is such on a different level, it's like you guys are second class citizens.
It is.
And when you look at all of the time, the money, and the effort that y'all invest on kicking off Mardi Gras season, you have to be on the same footing as these other crews. And it's so important as we update Mardi Gras to reflect that. I mean, also, obviously, apparently now we have to go be grandpa or grandma and tell these crews stop shooting Mylar into Transformers, but that's a whole separate thing. But we will, when we're updating those codes, it's so important to make sure. I mean, what is really daunting to me is that it's such a tremendous thing you guys did to create Chewbacchus. But at the same token, I can't imagine the groups that come behind you that are similarly kind of want to do something similar, and they look at how you guys are treated and just go, well, it's not even worth it. I mean, these guys have been around for over a decade and they're treated like crap. Why the hell would I try anything new? Because if after a decade, they're still second class to Mardi Gras crews that have been around less longer than you guys have been. There are crews currently rolling in the traditional Mardi Gras schedule that are younger than y'all and are treated better. And that is awful.
Yes. Well, and like the disparity about what rules get applied to who is also very real. And, you know, it certainly feels like the epitome of who you know in New Orleans. And if you're friends with the right people, then your crew gets treated right. And if you're not, and, you know, we're a bunch of misfits and nerds that, you know, then we're not on that list. We're not on the cool kids list.
To be clear, and it could be a direct correlation between the reforms we're doing, Leslie and I are both huge nerds.
Yes.
So I think the sea change on how you crews are treated is that your people finally infiltrated the council as super geek nerds. They're like, oh, no. It's for us, Chewbacchus is as important as Endymion, as Bacchus, as all these parades. You think these are the parades that make you happy and make your soul sing. I get more out of watching Chewbacchus than I get. I mean, I'm gonna piss off people, but Monet and I just piss off people. I get more out of watching Chewbacchus than probably 75% of the parades in Mardi Gras. And honestly, I get out of bed. I'll get out of bed for Chewbacchus before I'll get out of my house for Hermes or Bacchus. Just saying.
Here's the other thing, too, that I'm going to lay out is that the walking crews are not leaving behind, you know, plastic beads that are clogging up our city waterways, that are leaving lead in our soil, that are leaving detrimental impacts behind them that we aren't doing.
And you're walking, so you're not using up gas guzzling tractors. You're also, this is totally sad to say, but 100% true, you're more reliable to go your whole route without incident, as in no breakdowns, no running over people, no running into trees, no shooting Mylar cans in a transformer. Sorry, you have to go there again. But the point is that like you have the lowest impact, and more importantly, I hate to sound like nativeness, but like you guys really have New Orleanians in your crews. Like you're inclusive, and you made a point very early on, which is that the cost of being in a crew is cost prohibitive. And what's amazing to me, and I've said this before, and I said it in the council chamber, the fact that these crews that charge thousands of dollars of dues pay the city $1,750 for a permit, and we pick up all the costs. And you guys who don't leave beads, don't leave trash, don't pollute, stay on your route, and are the most inclusive, you guys got to foot the whole bill. And that's insane. That is just so incredibly. So it's like, to your point of it's who you know and what's good for me, you know, do as I say, not as I do. If you are one of the crews who's lucky enough to make it through that process, and get your like pseudo taxi cab medallion. That's what I call those damn permits right now. They're not taxi cab
Well,
medallions.
and then it's also like not real. It's fake, right? Because
Right.
the limit of the number of crews is we haven't abided by the rules that we set out.
For the
right?
podcast audience, the cap in ordinance of Mardi Gras crews is 30. We currently have 35 running this year. And part of the general reform package on Mardi Gras crews during the traditional season is the Mardi Gras advisory committee is going to have to make a decision where either they increase the cap, which they don't want to do because they don't want to have it be unlimited, or they're going to have to figure out which crews go. Or in the alternative, the council's going to have to figure out which crews go because the law is 30. But one of the things that I've kind of put out there. So when I was growing up, believe it or not, because a lot of people will be Monet won't know because she's a Zoomer. So this is ancient history to you. Parades used to run throughout the city. Hercules ran in Gentilly. Like there was a parade in Gentilly. And there were parades throughout the city. And as difficult as it may seem, every neighborhood had a parade. It was only as the population shrunk post oil boom that the city consolidated the parades to the uptown routes because that's where the people who had the most connections and the most money, as the cost of Mardi Gras and production got up, they're the ones that survived because they were the ones who had the most connections. And I mean, as we look forward to trying to bring more groups into Mardi Gras, it's one of those things where it's like, I would love for someone to show up one day and be like, listen, I want to run a Mardi Gras crew in Gentilly, 7th Ward kind of Mardi Gras crew. And for the Mardi Gras advisory committee to go like, oh, this is a new thing. That's just us not rehashing another parade on the route. Now that Chewbacchus has opened up the size of Mardi Gras season, why can't you have parades in other parts of the city in that lead up to the uptown concentrated parades? Like, why not think outside the box and say, because I love how my friends uptown are like, man, I'm like 4 feet from Mardi Gras. And it's like, must be nice. Must be nice.
Well, because the economic impact of a parade, I think Chewbacchus has shown can be everything to a neighborhood. And why wouldn't we want to have other neighborhoods succeed and benefit from what that can do?
No, you're right. And also, I mean, I'd love for my kids to have the experience of being able to walk 2 or 3 blocks from their house to go to a parade. Obviously, and you guys are kind of a pioneer on solving logistics. Like you were right. Chewbacchus running the same weekend as Bacchus or whatever was problematic. So you found a solution. I think that it's just there's so much more Mardi Gras could be for everyone than what it is. And part of having this like general, like public conversation on what we want Mardi Gras to be as a city is Mardi Gras is for everybody. And I think really part of what the wonder of Chewbacchus is that when I say that, you mean it. Mardi Gras is for everybody. If you are a family that is at or below the federal poverty line, that will never be able to afford to be in a uptown Mardi Gras crew, you can find a place in Chewbacchus to dress your kids up and they can be in a parade. And they can be in a parade and enjoy that entire experience. It's not denied to them based upon where they live or how much money they have. And the fact that we don't value Chewbacchus even more than the other parades for being that inclusive is just crazy.
Well, and I think what's really at the heart of this whole conversation too is that those of us who live here know truly that Mardi Gras is real meaning of life type stuff. It's not just a party in the streets, right? Because on Friday night in August, I'm sitting around the table with everybody who I walk with in my crew, which is my mom and my brother and my sister and their nieces and nephews and best friends. And we're sitting around the table making art that we're going to give away for free to strangers on the street. And we're bonding and we're creating moments that when I die, I look at those moments Chewbacchus helped build, right? Because we are getting together, we're making art, we're breaking bread, we're doing those like intimate connections while also maybe, you know, having conversations about Star Wars. And it's interweaving all of these moments in life that are important and real. And that's what Mardi Gras is built on.
I mean, you're
Absolutely.
100%. Well, let's be clear. Original Mardi Gras was rich people like in horse-drawn carriages doing whatever,
That's what our Mardi Gras is
but
built
it's
on.
what I mean. Same reason why like people are like, oh, I want to interpret the Constitution the way it was done. Oh, you mean when women were property and slaves were slaves? But it is what Mardi Gras is to the city of New Orleans now. The Mardi Gras of today is a Mardi Gras that is about family and community and inclusiveness and shared experience. Whether you're at Chewbacchus, whether you're at Endymion, well, Endymion's kind of like you're at Endymion, everyone has these moments in these locations or whatever that bring them together annually to like be together. And the fact that we're not treasuring everyone that helps foster that environment and also, you know, culling the groups that aren't inclusive and by inclusive, I mean not fostering environments where everyone feels welcome to participate in their parades or even the viewing experience. It's just, it's just sad. And I mean, I think, like I said, in council, and this gets me in trouble frequently. I'm not here to make friends. I'm kind of here to bring truth and fire. And like this to me is an important part of making Mardi Gras what it could be and sustainable for the future. Because as Mardi Gras continues to lurch forward as Mardi Gras, as the city continues to move forward, it's important that Mardi Gras evolve to be accountable to the people who are here, not defined by the people in the 1890s, 1880s that like first started doing Mardi Gras. I had the misfortune of going to college in Mobile, liked my college, didn't like the city so much. And you know their whole drama of we did Mardi Gras first. And it's like no one is coming from
It's
Japan
like,
to go
shut
do Mardi
up.
Gras in Spring Hill, I mean in Mobile, dude. Like no one gives a crap. But the point being that the Mardi Gras in Mobile is very similar to the Mardi Gras we have here in that it's like social clubs and exclusivity and you know it is a who you know to participate kind of event. And Mardi Gras using that kind of model is like the parade is not about inclusivity, it's about let them eat cake. Like we have all feted and had our fill in private, and now we are coming to you, the masses, to give you, you know, your due so that you'll go back to being placated for a year. And whether that was the origins, it's not what Mardi Gras is today. And it needs to reflect both an ordinance and how we implement it, that it's about everyone has a place in Mardi Gras. I mean, people really revere, as they should, Mardi Gras Indians, for example, but people forget Mardi Gras Indians, Zulu, those were black people who were acting out against the establishment because they were excluded from Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras Indians weren't just like, oh, that's just good. It was like, we are part of this community. We are part of this process, but because we're not included, we created our own thing. There is this line that goes that is this saying on all these different things I have around here that get thrown at me saying, you know, everything you like about New Orleans is because of black people. That's
That
100%.
art.
But I would add everything you like about New Orleans is from real people, because the people who are in this city who make up this city, they're what makes this city so genuine. And it's so important that everything we do as we try to like reshape what Mardi Gras will be deals with making everyone feel like they can be part of Mardi Gras. That's just kind of how I feel.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I think we've covered it all. I
Yeah.
know, Ariana, you've gotta go teach the future generations. So,
Just make sure you're teaching them right, like Star Wars and sci-fi, and no L. Ron Hubbard. No L. Ron
Yeah.
Hubbard. Blink twice if you're trapped in a Scientology camp. Okay, no blinking twice. You're good. You're good.
I'm heading out to work on some stuff for Book Fest at Tulane. So
awesome.
Exciting,
Yes.
nerdy thing.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming. We definitely appreciate it. And yeah, I don't know how to close out these things. JP does.
You close them out by saying, if anyone wants to follow Chewbacchus or you on social media or any platforms, why don't you share those links?
Yes. Yeah, you can find us and join the crew at chewbacchus.org or follow us on Instagram at Crew of Chew.
All right. And little known fact, my dog is named Chewbacchus. Chewbacca. My dog is named Chewbacca. So I'm hardcore. I'm hardcore.
Ready for it.
And for all you Star Trek nerds who are mad at me now, the other dog's name is Tiberius. Okay. So seriously, back off me, Star Trek people. All right.
This is a balanced household.
Have a great day. Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
All right, bye.